In the year 1504, when a young Hernán Cortés first set foot on the island of Hispaniola, nowadays comprising the Dominican Republic and Haiti, and realized that he had entered a world that was not his own, his imagination became filled with desires. Like a typical only child, he was used to having anything that he longed for. When he was growing up, he never had to share his toys with anyone, and as a result was a capricious child who, as soon as he wanted something, would take it without hesitation. With such traits, it is not surprising that on discovering new lands, his mind was overcome with ambition. He had arrived in Hispaniola on his own, not owing allegiance to any army or religious order. What he brought with him, aside from delusions of grandeur and a yearning to see the world, was a desire for liberty. The persistent pampering of his mother had suffocated him and made him into a weak and sickly child. His adventurous spirit was a prisoner within the parental walls. Moreover, his parents' enormous expectations were an onus, a weighty burden that tormented him. He also felt that his parents, though they never told him outright, were disappointed with his short stature. He was not tall enough to join a cavalry or an army, so he was left with three options: to become a page in the king's court, to become a priest, or to train for a suitable profession. His father was never able to get Hernán accepted as a page, so that option was discarded. They found a place for him as an altar boy at the church, but he never made it past that position, perhaps because his character was not suited to serving God in such fashion. Ultimately, Cortés attended the University of Salamanca, where he learned Latin and studied law for a short period. On the lookout for fresh opportunities, however, he soon decided to lift anchor and set sail for the New World. He wanted to prove to his mother that he wasn't as small as she thought he was, and that he didn't need so much schooling to obtain money and power. He wanted to be rich, just like the nobles, who could do whatever they wished. There in Hispaniola, the path his life would take depended on himself and himself alone. Almost as soon as he arrived, he introduced himself to the Spanish rulers of the island, foremost among them Governor Nicolás de Ovando and several of his close associates. In conversing with them, he learned of the way of life in this new world and what it had to offer them. He didn't hesitate to suggest solutions to problems of governing, designing projects, and then persuading them that he was the one who could carry them out. Soon enough, he had gained the trust and regard of the rulers, for not only had he succeeded in battles against the natives and helped to quell rebellions, but he had also designed routes and roads to cover distances in less time and in a much more secure fashion, as a result of which he was awarded a royal land grant of considerable value in a region where they planted sugarcane. For Cortés, this was not enough. His ambitious spirit wasn't satisfied. He wanted gold. All the gold he could get his hands on. He wanted to dazzle the world. One morning, shedding the fear of always having to appear perfect, he decided to take off his boots, which added a little height to his short stature, and unfasten and cast off his clothes, so that he could feel his body just as nature had made it. He needed to rest his cracked feet, which during his voyage from Spain had become infected with various fungi that were difficult to treat. The joyous prospect of walking barefoot in the sand motivated his spirit. The peace he felt that morning was so vast that he thanked God for his life and for the chance to live in such a historic period. Approaching the sea, he allowed the water to wash his feet, and he felt immediate relief knowing that the water would purify his wounds the same way it purified the clothes of sailors on the high seas. During long seafaring trips, the only way to wash clothes was to bind them tightly inside a net that was cast overboard as the ship sailed on. The sea penetrated the fibers of the cloth, washed off all impurities, and left them completely clean. He remained there on the shore a long while, letting the waves wash his wounds. Staring off toward the horizon, he recalled the long days of his voyage, when, overwhelmed on the ship's deck, he observed the sky and the stars until his mind opened, and he understood, for the first time, the roundness of the earth and the infinity of the cosmos. Later, when he emerged from the sea, he lay down in the grass so that his feet would benefit from the purifying rays of the sun. With one arm, he covered his eyes to protect them from the midday light and let his mind relax. The distant sound of the waves lulled him to sleep for a moment. And that one careless moment was all it took for a venomous scorpion to sting him and release all its poison into his body. For 3 days, Cortés struggled between life and death. They were days of rain and prayers. A powerful storm lashed into the island, and it rained ceaselessly. Cortés did not even notice the thunder, and the Spanish companions who had helped him listened to him, frightened by the things he said in his delirium. He spoke in Latin and other strange tongues. He told them that there was an enormous sun that continued to grow and grow, a sun that would explode and spread bloodshed everywhere. He said that human beings would fly through the sky without needing to rest on the earth, that tears and the unbearable stench of death would conquer all of his body. He pronounced the names of Moorish kings, spoke of the historic defeats of Spain, mourned the crucifixion, entrusted himself to the Virgin of Guadalupe, shouted out curses, and stated that it had been a serpent, a great serpent that had bitten him, a serpent that lifted itself up in the air and flew in front of his eyes. On and on he raved until he fell completely asleep. Some had left him for dead, and he seemed so peaceful that they made plans to bury him the morning after. But when they arrived there to proceed with the holy burial, they found that Cortés had opened his eyes and miraculously recovered. Observing a transformation in him, they realized that his face radiated a new strength, a new power. They all congratulated him and told him that he had been reborn. Malinche had risen earlier than usual. All night long she had not been able to sleep. She was afraid. In the coming days, for the 3rd time in her life, she would experience a complete change. After sunrise, they were going to give her away once again. She couldn't imagine what was so wrong with her deep inside that they would treat her like such a burdensome object, for such was the ease with which they dispensed of her. She made an effort to do her best, not to cause any problems, to work hard. And yet, for whatever strange reasons, they would not allow her to take root anywhere. She ground corn almost in the dark, lit only by the reflection of the moon. Since the day before, when the songs of the birds had migrated, her heart had begun to shrink. In complete silence, she had watched as the birds in their flight took away with them through the air a part of the weather, of light, and of time. Her time. She would never again see the dusk from that place. Night was approaching, accompanied by uncertainty. What would her life be like under her new masters? What would become of her cornfield? Who would plant the corn anew and harvest it for her? Would the field die without her care? A few tears escaped from her eyes. Suddenly, she thought of Cihuacóatl, the snake woman, the goddess also known as Quilatztli, mother of the human race, who at nights wandered through the canals of the great Tenochtitlan, weeping for her children. They said that those who heard her could not go back to sleep. So terrifying were her mournful, anxious wails for the future of her children. She shouted out all the dangers and devastations that lay in wait for them. Malinali, like Cihuacóatl, wept at not being able to protect her harvest. For Malinali, each ear of corn was a hymn to life, to fertility, to the gods. Without her care, what would become of her cornfield? She wouldn't know. From this day forward, she would begin to journey through a path that she had traveled before, being separated from the earth she had grown attached to. Once again, she would arrive at a foreign place. Once again, be the newcomer, an outsider, the one who did not belong. She knew from experience that she would quickly have to ingratiate herself with her new masters to avoid being rejected or, in more dire cases, punished. Then there would be the phase when she would have to sharpen her senses in order to see and hear as acutely as possible, so that she could assimilate quickly all the new customs and the words most frequently used by the group she was to become a part of, so that, finally, she would be judged on her own merits. Whenever she tried to close her eyes and rest, a twinge in her stomach would prevent her from sleeping. With her eyes wide open, she remembered her grandmother, and her thoughts were filled with dear and painful images at once. Her grandmother's death had set in motion her first change. The warmest and most protective affection that Malinali had experienced in her infancy was from her grandmother, who for years had awaited her birth.